Hey, it's Alexis, and today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in July and August, because I just realized I never did a July wrap-up. So, find the right page in my journal here. So the first book that I read in July was Happy People Are Annoying by Josh Peck, and I ended up listening to this one on an audiobook, and I'm not going to rate it since it's a memoir, but this is basically Josh telling about, it starts like when he was born until he was 10, something like that. Like whenever he first became like a child actor, I want to say he was like 10 or 11 maybe. And then it tells like while he was like, I was gonna say super famous, but like while he was like being like well known, like so Drake and Josh era type. And then talks about like what he's doing now. But he makes fun of himself and has laughs at things that happened to him and all that. And I just thought that this was really good. And I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook version of it because I just feel like it's better than just reading it. Then after that, my husband and I together, we read The Office BFFs, Tales of the Office from Two Best Friends Who Were There by Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsley. And we listened to the audiobook, but we also flipped through this book because it's full of all kinds of pictures and things that they reference like in the audiobook. And the audiobook also has some really cool aspects to it. Like they have guest stars come on and talk, and they have people singing songs, and I highly recommend the audiobook. But I will say that like a lot of the reviews that I read about this, I didn't rate it since it is a memoir, but a lot of the like reviews were people saying that if you've listened to their podcast, I believe it's The Office Ladies, something like that. A lot of people were saying that if you have listened to that podcast, that you already know the information that's in this book. So I would say if you've listened to the podcast, maybe don't read the book. But if you're like a huge fan of The Office, it's a really cool book to read. And even if you've listened to their podcast, maybe you could still like flip through this book to see all the pictures in it because they're pretty cool. The next one I listened to on audiobook as well was Part of Your World by Liz Broswell. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars. So this book is a Disney twisted tale. So it's a reimagining of The Little Mermaid. And this book starts out like toward the end of the Little Mermaid movie. But instead of Eric and Ariel getting married, this starts out with Eric married to Vanessa, which is Ursula's alter ego from the movie. And Ariel ends up getting turned back into a mermaid, but she still doesn't have her voice. And King Triton was still turned into the little pull-up thing that he was turned into in the movie. So now Ariel is queen of the sea or princess of the sea or something because her dad's no longer under the sea to rule the place. So Ariel with her no voice is ruling the kingdom, and she has to try to figure out a way to defeat Ursula to make things go back to the way they're supposed to be and so that she can get her voice back. And this was high stakes, I will say that. I was like on the edge of my seat the whole time I was listening to this. I was like, I need to know what happens. I can't go to bed. I need to finish this. So I highly recommend this one, especially if you like love The Little Mermaid. And then the next book that I read, I don't have a physical copy of. I also listened to the audiobook. I listened to Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar. And again, I didn't rate this one either because it is a memoir. But I grew up watching the Duggars on TV. They had like multiple different shows. I don't even know the first one, 15 Kids and Counting, 6, I don't know, something like that. I watched like all of those shows, and I was just really interested in that family dynamic because first of all, they have a lot of kids. And secondly, the type of, I don't know if it's Christian or not, like, but the like type of religion that they were was kind of interesting to me because like I'd never heard of it before. And so this book is her like explaining how she felt about being on the TV show, how she felt about her life, and she like goes into more depth about the religion that they were a part of, and it was just very, very interesting to learn more about. So I highly recommend this one if you've like ever watched them or anything like that. And then I read Heartstopper Volume 5 by Alice Oseman. I really wanted to put this one off a little bit longer, at least until I knew when the 6th one was coming out. But then I got an email from Libby saying that my library added it to the catalog. So I just went ahead and read it. But now I'm like upset that I read it. Not because it's a bad book, but because it leaves off on a cliffhanger and nobody knows when the 6th book is coming out. So that's annoying. But now I'm all caught up on the books that are out. So I could start the show, but my sister told me to wait till October when the new season comes out. So hopefully October hurries up so that I can watch the show, because I'm like obsessed with this whole thing. But I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well, because I'm not sure how to rate graphic novels. But like, I'm obsessed with this series. I want to buy the special edition of Heartstopper. Like, that's how obsessed I am with this series. But yeah, so this whole series I've technically rated 4 stars, but it might be a 5-star series to me. Like I said, I don't know like what the proper rating system is for this, but highly recommend this whole series. And then after that, I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. It wasn't a terrible book. It just wasn't my favorite. I related with both of the main characters in different ways. So this book is about Nora, who is the older sister, and her mom passes away, so she feels like it's her responsibility to take care of her younger sister. And she's passed up her dream job so that she could do the job that made more money to take care of her sister, to give her sister the life that she deserved and all that. I relate to that a little because I am the oldest sister. I have 4 younger siblings, and whenever my dad passed, I felt like it was my responsibility to step up in his place basically and take care of my younger siblings. So I get the pressure that Nora was going through, but in a way, she was doing what she thought was best, but she also wasn't really taking into consideration herself. And I relate to that because sometimes I feel like I just need to do for other people and not worry about me. So reading somebody else like struggle through that made me realize what I do to myself. So I'm like gonna start working on that. And then this also had the main character Charlie, who he always felt like growing up he was never good enough. He felt like his parents were never going to approve of any of his decisions, anything he wanted to do. They just wanted him to follow the exact footsteps that they had planned out in his head. And I also feel the pressure. Like, I always felt growing up that I was never good enough, that everything I did was wrong, basically. I related to both of these main characters, but in different ways. And I liked that. Like, that I had this connection with these characters. But then I didn't really care for the characters together. So this is about Nora, whose sister is moving, but doesn't want to tell her yet. So she plans this vacation for the two of them in this town that their favorite book is based off of. And there she runs into Charlie. Charlie is an editor, and he refused to edit the book that is based on this town that he lives in. And the author of this book ends up writing a second one, and now Charlie and Nora are working together to edit the new one. But Charlie's one of those like grumpy people and not a very nice person to be around. So him and Nora like clash at first, and then they start to work together and they start to get along and become friends and stuff. But I just didn't feel like their dynamic was good together. I feel like they were better friends and not lovers, and I feel like they should have stayed just friends and been separate, but it's just my opinion. So yeah, I ended up giving that one 3.5 stars. So then I read Reflection by Elizabeth Lim, and this is the Disney Twisted Tale of Mulan. I ended up rating this one 2.5 stars. Hear me out. Mulan was never my favorite. Like, it was probably my least favorite Disney movie of all time. Yes, Mulan is a badass. Yeah, she's cool for saving China and everything that she did. But I just didn't really care about her. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it was. Never my favorite. But I went into this one with an open mind because someone that I actually personally know told me that this was really good. She read it. She really enjoyed it. So I was like, okay, I'm looking forward to it, you know? It starts out, like, the very first page starts out in the middle of a battle scene, kind of like in the movie, how her and the army was fighting the Huns. That's basically where this starts. And then Shang gets hurt, and his spirit, he ends up almost dying, and so his spirit leaves his body, but it goes to the underworld, and Mulan tries to save him, like, to make sure that he stays alive and doesn't actually die. So it's Mulan traveling in the underworld, and it was very weird. I don't really know how to describe it, but the book, the premise was cool, but the way that it was executed was just weird. So I don't recommend this one unless you're, like, really obsessed with Mulan. Then maybe you'll like it, but this was not a favorite of mine. And then after that, I read All In by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. So this is book 3 of the Natural series, so I'm not going to say, like, a whole lot about it, you know, because it's book 3. But I kind of figured out what was happening at the very, very beginning of this book. So I feel like that's a little bit why I didn't really care for it that much. But also, I don't know what it was about this one, but the characters seemed different, and I didn't like them. Like, I was obsessed with the characters in the first two, and then this one, it just felt like they changed, and I wasn't as interested in them. I don't really know how to say it, but I don't know. Something was different, and I didn't really care for it. But I am excited to read the 4th book in this series, and hopefully it, like, gives me that feeling that I had before. Like, I was obsessed with the series, so hopefully the 4th one, like, reignites my love for it. And then the last book that I read in July was If You Would Have Told Me by John Stamos, and I listened to this one on audiobook as well. Didn't rate it because it is a memoir, but this is John Stamos recounting his life and the important parts of his life, and talks about him getting famous, who he was friends with, how his, like, relationships changed, and, you know, whatever. I grew up loving Full House. Like, it was my favorite show from when I was, like, 2 years old until I was in, like, high school. The guy that he was on Full House is not who he seems to be in real life. Like, reading this book, he seems like he's kind of a jackass, and he's also kind of narcissistic, and some of the things that he said in this book makes me like, why'd I ever like this guy? Again, I don't know him in real life. He might not be the way that he portrayed himself in this book, but he also might be. I don't know. But I didn't rate it, but I understood what people were saying when I was reading through the ratings, because people didn't like this book very much. And then the first book that I read in August was Happy Place by Emily Henry. I ended up rating this one 5 stars. So this is my second 5-star book of the year. So if you don't know what this is about Win and Harriet, who were a couple. They were engaged to be married, and they recently separated, but they didn't tell their friend group that they separated. So their friend group is planning their yearly trip, I guess you could say. And the friend group doesn't know that Win and Harriet separated, so Win and Harriet are pretending to be a couple to go on this trip to not ruin things for their friends. I feel like this book is more than like a romance type thing like people think about Emily Henry's books. This one is like navigating your 20s, basically. It's showing you the side, like the real side of relationships. It's showing you friendships as you're growing up. It's showing you what it's like to be with somebody romantically and the hardships of it. And as someone who's married, I got married when I was 20. I related to this like a whole lot, and I feel like that's a big reason why this was a 5-star for me, because I related to the characters a lot more in this book. I do recommend all of Emily Henry's books, but like I especially recommend this one because like I said, I feel like if you're in your 20s that this is a good one for you to read. The next book that I read was Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter, and I ended up giving this one 3 stars. This was the Last Lone Painter book that I had on my shelf that was unread. I don't know what it was about this one, but I didn't like it. So this is about Olivia, who just got out of a relationship. I don't remember if she was engaged or they were just dating, but she got out of a relationship. It ended badly, and something happens, and she has to move in with her brother. And when she's there, she gets this text message from the wrong number, or a wrong number, not the wrong number. And he is like, basically, hey, it's your number neighbor. What's going on? You know? And then they like strike up a friendship, and then they decide to meet, and the person that it is, she already knows in real life, so it's kind of awkward between them. And then things just escalate from there. But it was a really cool idea. I just don't like the way it was executed. So I didn't like this one very much. And then the next book that I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. And this was a reread for me. I read it again before the movie came out, and then went and watched the movie. I feel like the movie really aligns with the book. They did change a few things, but they changed them for the better. Like, it makes more sense, the things that they changed, than it did in the book. If you liked this book and you haven't watched the movie yet, I do recommend the movie. But if you have not read this book, this is got trigger warnings in it of like domestic abuse and all that. So read the triggers. But this is about Lily, who moves to Boston and ends up opening a flower shop. And she meets a neurosurgeon named Ryle, and they form a connection and a relationship, and things just get kind of crazy. We'll say that. But I do recommend this one. I know a lot of people say that she romanticizes abuse in all her books, but I feel like this one is more of a, here's how you can get out of the situation that you're in if you're in a but if you're in an abusive relationship. I feel like this isn't romanticizing abuse. I feel like it's, if this person can escape, you can escape. Here's the steps you can take. I feel like it's one of those books. I do recommend this one. I just kept the 5-star rating that I had already given it the second time I read it, so I guess you could say this is a 5-star read for me again. And then the next book that I read was also a reread, but I listened to the audiobook version of this time, and it was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So I read this in September of last year, and I gave it 4.5 stars, but this book has literally been in my mind since I read it last year, like constantly thinking about it. So when I reread it, I already knew it was going to be 5 stars again, or not again, but this is a 5-star book now. I bumped it up to 5 stars. I highly recommend this book if you've never read it. It's about Addie, who makes a deal with the devil to live forever. But in exchange to living forever, she now has a curse upon her, where every time she meets somebody, they forget who she is as soon as they walk away from her. Until one day, this guy remembers her. And it's a wild story, and I highly recommend it. It is a little bit slow in some parts, so just be aware of that, but otherwise, it's fantastic. Then the next book that I read in August, probably the worst book that I read in August, is Layla by Colleen Hoover. I ended up giving this one 1.5 stars. This book is terrible. This is about Leeds, who is in his friend's band, and his friend's band is performing at this wedding. The wedding happens to be Layla's sister's wedding. So Leeds meets Layla, and immediately within the first chapter, they're having a physical relationship. They don't even know each other, but they're getting physical. Then their relationship escalates from there. Then there's an accident, and Layla's in the hospital for 6 months, I believe. And when she's out of the hospital, Leeds is the one taking care of her. But he's like, something's not right. This isn't the Layla that I fell in love with. So he plans a trip back to where the wedding was at to try to reignite her spunk, I guess, because she's not herself anymore. And when they're there, he meets somebody else and is like, I'm falling out of love with Layla. I'm falling in love with this person. I thought that this book was dumb, not gonna lie. The plot twist was kind of predictable, kind of stupid. But yeah, if you are like just getting into thrillers, like you haven't really read thrillers before, maybe you'll like this one. I don't know. But I didn't. And then after that, I read The Catch by Amy Leah. Not sure how to say her name. But I ended up giving this one 3 stars. This is the 3rd book in, I believe it's called the Influencer series. So this is about Melanie, or Mel as she goes by, who is a fashion influencer. And she's going to Canada for this influencer trip thing. Her travel agent gets the dates wrong, so she's there a week early. But because the travel agent got the dates wrong, she can't check into the resort she's supposed to be at. So she has to find somewhere else to stay. So she's staying at this bed and breakfast that's run by Evan and his cousin. And Evan is this like brooding jerk kind of guy. And he's like, no, you can't stay here. No, no, no. And he's just grumpy all the time. But his cousin lets her stay. She becomes friends with her cousin. She becomes friends with Evan's cousin. And then her and Evan just start like hanging out a little bit more, and she's trying to uncover the real him because she feels like he's hiding a secret, and like that's why he's so grumpy and stuff. And then they like obviously form a little friendship and relationship, but I don't know. I just didn't really care for either of the main characters. I thought that they were both, I felt like she was a little bossy and immature, and I felt like he was just a grump, and I wasn't interested in them. And then the last book that I read in August was Heartbones by Colleen Hoover, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. I liked it a lot more than Layla, but it's not like a favorite of mine. So this is about Bea, who is 17, sorry, she's gonna be 18. She lives with her mother in Kentucky, and within the first chapter, her mother overdoses and dies on heroin. She has no other choice since she's a minor. She has to go live with her dad, but she doesn't really know her dad. Like, she sees him maybe once a year when she was younger because he lives in Seattle or something. I don't know. But she would like visit him every once in a while, but not very often. So she has no other choice but to go live with him. And when she gets there, she finds out that her dad has this life that she either didn't know about before or she forgot about, where he's married and has a stepdaughter. So now she has a stepsister, and her stepsister seems nice, but she doesn't know her. And as soon as she gets there, her stepsister's like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And Bea's like, no. And she's like, good, I want to set you up with a neighbor named Samson. Samson's going through a lot of things personally. Bea's going through a lot of things personally. They don't need to be together. So they try out friendship first. And you know how that goes. But I thought that this was a good book. It's just not one of my favorites by Colleen Hoover either. So I'm editing this video right now, and I just realized that I forgot to talk about a book that I read. So I listened to the audiobook of Thank You for Listening by Julia Whalen. This book was really, really funny. I ended up giving it 4 stars. And this is about Shwani, I think is how you say her name. And she is an audiobook person. Like, she reads audiobooks, I guess. I don't really know what that's called. But she's an audiobook narrator. That's the word I was looking for. It's different than what she planned her life out to be. She planned her life out to be like a movie star, but something happened to her. She had an accident, so now she's doing audiobook narration. But she's also going through life right now, dealing with her grandmother getting Alzheimer's and a bunch of other things. She runs into a stranger at the bar and kind of hits it off with him, but she gives a fake identity, so he doesn't know who she really is, and she doesn't know who he really is because he also gave a fake identity. Then she finds out that one of her favorite authors or something, I guess, she passes away, but she wants Shwani and Brock McKnight to co-narrate this audiobook of her last book. Then a bunch of secrets start coming out and crazy things start happening. But I was hooked on this book from the very beginning. So I highly recommend this one. Can't believe I forgot to talk about it. But there we are. So yeah, that's all the books that I read in July and August. I do have a few more videos coming out this month. I am still in the process of unpacking my house. We just moved. Videos might still be a little sporadic for a while till we get everything unpacked and everything ready, but I am filming videos. They will be still uploading, so just be on the lookout for those. But yeah, thank you so much for watching today's video, and let me know what you read in August, what you're going to read in September, and yeah, just again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.